Hi everyone, welcome to Twisted Talks. I'm Josh.
I'm Tanya.
And this week we are covering the case of the Golden State Killer. Now, we haven't exactly decided on whether this is a one-parter or a two-parter. So when we get to the part where we think we should break it, depending on how long we've spent talking to you, you will then find out if it is a one-parter or a two-parter.
It's a surprise for us all.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned, everybody. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. But yes, Golden State Killer, Joseph James DeAngelo, and beginning with Tanya. Take it away, my G.
Here I go. So, Joseph James DeAngelo was born on November 8th, 1945 in Bath, New York. He was the oldest of 4 children born to Joseph DeAngelo Sr. and Kathleen Bosanko. And according to his siblings, he was abused by their father as a child. A relative also reported that DeAngelo had witnessed the rape of his younger sister by 2 airmen in a warehouse in West Germany while the family was stationed there. His sister was 7 years old at the time.
That's disgusting.
7. I'm going to say that one more time. She was 7. So due to Joseph Sr. being a US Army sergeant, the family moved around quite a bit during DeAngelo's childhood. Eventually, they moved to Sacramento, California, where DeAngelo attended 2 different high schools. So from 1959 to 1960, he went to Mills Junior High School in Rancho Cordova. And from 1961 to 1964, he went to Folsom High School, which is where he got his GED.
Is that the same place where Folsom Prison is then?
I'd imagine close enough.
Yeah, same area.
Folsom Prison Blues. So GED, it stands for General Education Development. I personally always thought it was like General Education Degree or something. And while there, he also played on the school's junior varsity baseball team. Now, according to prosecutors, DeAngelo would commit burglaries and torture animals in his teenage years. In September 1964...
The hallmarks
of a serial killer. In September 1964, DeAngelo joined the US Navy, where he served for 22 months as a damage controlman on the USS Canberra and the USS Piedmont.
What a weird name the second one is.
Piedmont? Piedmont. I'm sure it's Piedmont.
Sure.
I know it's spelled like Piedmont, but
I would have said
Piedmont, whatever.
But I don't know.
Piedmont. And this was...
She's feeling French.
I'm feeling fancy. So, oui, baguette.
Oui, Piedmont.
So, this was during the Vietnam War. After he was discharged, he attended Sierra College and he graduated from there with an associate degree in police science with honours. He later attended Sacramento State University in 1971, where he earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And after this, he took postgraduate courses and undertook further police training at the College of Sequoias in Visalia before completing a 32-week-long police internship at the police department in Roseville.
Okay. So then we move on to the whole police background thing. That thing.
You know that thing where he was a police officer?
You know. No, you don't, because I'm about to tell you.
Here we go. Educate us, Josh.
In Exeter during the mid-1970s, the police department was very small, with less than 10 police officers patrolling a population of around 5,000. That's balance.
That makes sense. That's what...
Same. Took the air out of me.
Shocking.
Shooketh.
The population was 5,000, there was 10 police officers.
Around 5,000 and there was 10 police officers patrolling that.
So I can't do the maths on that.
Neither can I. So those of you with a calculator...
Hold on, I have a calculator.
Oh wait, 500.
What?
5,000 divided by 10 would be 1 police officer to 500 people. If we were to look at it that way.
Yeah.
That was actually really simple maths, but...
Yeah, well done. I have a learning disability. I can't do that shit.
You're exempt.
I think I should have been exempt from maths in school. It would have saved me a lot of stress and trauma.
Oh.
But continue.
School itself we should have been exempt from. Yeah. So one of the officers working for the Exeter Police Department was Joseph James DeAngelo. Joseph began his time with the Exeter Police in 1973 and worked there for 3 years in the burglary unit.
Oh my God. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, we're foreshadowing. He was described... Oh my God, I don't even... Do you know how I know that word?
How?
From RuPaul's Drag Race.
Really?
A queen is educated.
A queen is educated by a queen.
Oh yeah, so in the burglary unit. He was described as professional and ambitious, yet cool in nature towards his co-workers. Now, Farrell Ward, a member of the police department who had worked there for 30 years, said about Joseph, he was overeducated for the small department of Exeter. He just knew anything you wanted to talk about. Farrell also said, I think he had a bachelor's degree, all kinds of training. He didn't fit in with the other guys. We liked to joke and screw around and take stress off of what we were doing, and he was always serious. Farrell Ward also said that he had actually forgotten about Joseph DeAngelo until he was named as a suspect in what was one of California's most notorious strings of serial killings.
I worked with him for a couple of years, but
I kind of forgot he existed until...
Didn't leave an impression, you know?
Well, that changed. So there was a lot of speculation that the Golden State Killer may have been a police officer during the 4-decade hunt, and it was said that the killer appeared to understand how the police were looking for him.
I wonder how.
And some of the victims said that he had the manner of a police officer or military man. He has both, sweetie.
I'm not going to say nothing. Not going to say nothing.
So Farrell, not Farrell, he's not Farrell, excuse me. Farrell Ward and others who had worked with Joseph during his time in law enforcement said they were stunned when he was accused of being a serial killer. You know, he was a bit serious, a bit quiet. But you know,
didn't think he'd be a serial killer.
You know, yeah, didn't see that development. So in 1976, Joseph moved to the Auburn Police Department, located near Sacramento.
Really?
Auburn.
Auburn.
I say Auburn.
Auburn. We're putting a German spin on it.
Auburn.
Go on.
He served with this department for 3 years until he was fired for stealing dog repellent and a hammer from a hardware store.
I had seen that on Wikipedia.
Of all things.
How do you explain to your family, I got fired because I stole dog repellent?
Yeah, and there were so many different articles mentioning it, and I was like, of all things to get caught for, as a police officer. DeAngelo's time in both areas, Exeter and Auburn, linked with attacks that authorities have attributed to him. Like Joseph's co-workers from Exeter, his co-workers from Auburn also could not believe that the man they knew was the Golden State Killer. Like a lot of police officers of his generation, DeAngelo went into law enforcement, as you mentioned, after serving in the military. You said you did cover that, didn't you?
Yes, he was in the Navy.
Yes. So, I nearly called him Farrell again. Farrell Ward also said about DeAngelo, I liked him, but he's not the type of guy that I'd have over for a barbecue. He's just standoffish, too serious, seems like he's always thinking.
He's no fun.
He's, you know...
Can't have the crack with him.
Even following the arrest of Joseph DeAngelo, Farrell said that nothing about their interactions had seemed odd or sinister. Larry Poole, a retired Orange County sheriff's detective, who led the investigation into 4 of the murders attributed to the Golden State Killer, and tracked the Golden State Killer for years, said he was always a wolf in sheep's clothing. Joseph DeAngelo was not a police officer who became a killer, but a killer who became a police officer to be on the inside with those who would be searching for him.
It's scary when you think about it, like how many of the murderers that we've covered have been in the Navy, in the Army, in the...
They're always... A lot of them seem to have that kind of background, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's very strange.
This is one of them that you hear, that managed to have background in both. Yeah. But a lot of them seem to be just military or Navy or police.
But, I'm pretty sure most of our joint cases...
There's been a background.
No, not most, actually, because not Dahmer and not... no, we haven't done Richard Ramirez.
Well, a lot of our cases, whether it's individual or a fair few, a decent amount, enough for us to recognise it.
No, so just briefly on kind of marriage and relationships. So, excuse me, I apologise if my voice sounds a bit fucked. I was out last night and I was singing and dancing for 5 hours straight. I'm a shell of a human being. And I wasn't even drinking.
We're also recording from the car as well.
Yeah, it's cold.
And it's -2 degrees.
It's cold.
And we have the car off, so there's no heating because it gets in the way of the audio quality, and we just can't have that.
No, we're looking out for ye. Our toes are freezing off for ye.
Yes, now.
So in May 1970, DeAngelo got engaged to a classmate named Bonnie Jean Caldwell.
I like that name.
It's a cool name, Bonnie Caldwell. But Bonnie...
It's kind of witchy.
A little bit. I think it's because Bonnie always makes me think of the Vampire Diaries.
But even the surname gives me witchy vibes.
Caldwell would be more witchy for me, but this is Caldwell, Colwell.
I think it's because it gives me Hallowell vibes.
Yeah, anything with well.
Yeah.
Well, kid. But Bonnie ended the engagement in 1971 after DeAngelo started getting manipulative and abusive with her. He tried forcing her to help him cheat on an abnormal psychology test, and on one occasion after they broke up, he pulled a gun on her in an attempt to force her to marry him. Because that's going to work.
That's going to work.
That's going to work, yeah.
That's it. Oh my God, how romantic.
It's the best way to propose.
Where are you honeymooning? The local gun shore? Gun shore. It's a beach with guns. Gun shore. Gun store. My speech is not work. Oh God. Okay, this week it's you with the inappropriate comments, because last week it was... Oh wait, no, not last week, the week before.
Yeah. So in November 1973, he married Sharon Marie Huddle, and in 1980 they bought a house in Citrus Heights. Together they had 3 daughters, and in 1983 Sharon became a divorce attorney. The couple separated in 1991, and in July 2018 Sharon officially filed for divorce, with it being finalised in 2019.
And then moving on to employment. In terms of DeAngelo's employment history, it's a pretty short one. As you mentioned, he served in the US Navy in Vietnam. He was employed with the Exeter Police Department from 1973 to 1976. He then worked at the Auburn Police Department for a further 3 years, until, like we said, 1979 when he was fired. It isn't clear what he was doing for the 80s, but in the early 90s he started working at a distribution centre for the grocery store Save Mart. He retired in 2017 after working at the distribution centre for 27 years, and a Save Mart spokesperson told a Sacramento Bee, "None of his actions in the workplace would have led us to suspect any connection to the crimes being attributed to him."
Fair point. I suppose you wouldn't be going around work saying, well, I killed this one in 1970.
Well, you know what? Some probably would.
Yeah. So, according to DeAngelo's brother-in-law, he would casually bring the East Area Rapist up in conversation around the time of the original attacks. Around the time the original attacks took place, and neighbours reported that they would frequently hear him break out into loud, profane outbursts, with one stating that his family got a phone call from DeAngelo where he threatened to, quote, deliver a load of death because of their dog barking.
That's a bit fucking dramatic.
A bit overboard. And also, I don't know if we said this at the start. I don't think we did. Joseph DeAngelo has quite a few names in terms of, let's say, monikers given to him for his crimes. So he is known as the original Night Stalker, the Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist, and the Golden State Killer, but it is all the same person.
Yeah, and as you'll come to gather anyway as we go further on, because we cover them categorically.
You will hear us refer to him by a few different monikers throughout this case, but it is all referring to Joseph James DeAngelo.
Exactly.
So take it away, Joshua.
Okay, so again, another little short bit. Crimes. So this is just, obviously, as we go on, there's going to be a lot more detail, so this is just a little snippet. So DNA evidence tied DeAngelo to 8 murders in Goleta, Ventura, Dana Point and Irvine. 2 other murders in Goleta, I don't know.
I think Goleta.
Goleta sounds right. Lacked DNA evidence but were linked by MO, so the way he operated. Yeah. Joseph DeAngelo pled guilty to 3 other murders, 2 in Rancho Cordova and 1 in Visalia. DeAngelo also committed more than 50 known rapes in Sacramento, Contra Costa, Stanislaus, San Joaquin, Alameda. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because it's kind of a Spanish, isn't it?
Joaquin,
And J is pronounced like H in Spanish. Yeah. Alameda, Santa Clara and Yolo.
No.
Yeah. All counties in California. On top of all of this, DeAngelo was linked to hundreds of incidents of thefts, burglaries, peeping, stalking and prowling.
I live in Yolo, California.
I know.
So before becoming known as the Golden State Killer, DeAngelo had a training ground of sorts in the city of Visalia. Here he would be known as the Visalia Ransacker, a serial burglar and sexual predator who began by prowling around neighbourhoods and breaking into single-family homes. Once inside, he would destroy the inside of the house, but would only steal small personal items, so things that were kind of sentimental to the people living in the house. He would often
but not
ignore,
of monetary value.
Yeah, like he would often ignore much more valuable things that were in plain sight to him. He would leave warning signs, such as dishes or bottles propped up against doors or on the door handles, and this is something that he would later readapt. So the first reported crime was on March 19th, 1974, but it is thought that he may have started as early as 1968 or 1969 due to similar crimes that were reported during these years, and because DeAngelo's sister had moved to Visalia in 1969. Now, the Visalia Ransacker was also suspected of carrying out a number of rapes and murders in the area.
So then burglaries, which basically, to be honest, ties up with the Visalia, which I'll mention now anyway. So it is believed that before he began murdering and raping his victim, well, I don't think there was any really murders in Visalia. There was only one.
No, it's more that he was suspected, but there was none that could be definitively linked to him.
It is believed that he began murdering and raping his victims. Before he began murdering and raping his victims, the Golden State Killer, aka Joseph DeAngelo, was a burglar who robbed from at least 100 homes in Visalia between April of 1974 and December of 1975. At this time, the perpetrator was known as the Visalia Ransacker. It also appeared that, as you said, may have served as a training grounds for DeAngelo, as he also committed a murder during this time. Now, at first, the Visalia Ransacker mainly broke into the homes of his victim just to go through their belongings. He often scattered women's underwear around the house, stole small items as souvenirs, as you said, ignoring valuables that were in plain sight. Items that were taken from some of the homes included things like driver's licenses, souvenir coins and cufflinks. At one stage as well, Joseph DeAngelo set his eyes on Elizabeth Hupp. He stalked her through her bedroom window, and one night he attempted to kidnap her. Elizabeth later said in a Sacramento courtroom, on September 10th, 1975, I went to bed like any other night without a care in the world. A few hours later, my world turned upside down. At approximately 2 a.m, I was awakened by an intruder, Joseph DeAngelo, who was wearing a ski mask and pointing a gun at me, saying that he was taking me with him and that if I made any noise, he would kill me. Of course, then Elizabeth's father, Claude Snelling, woke up and confronted DeAngelo. DeAngelo then shot Claude Snelling twice before running away. Sadly, Claude passed away on the way to the hospital, and the murder of Claude Snelling was the first murder of the Golden State Killer, at the time known as the Visalia Ransacker. And I suppose that was because, you know, he hadn't gone out intending to murder anyone that night. He'd gone out attempting to kidnap and, self-preservation, yeah. The burglar and one-time killer allegedly soon became a serial rapist. It seemed that the robberies from 1974 to 1975 no longer satisfied him. By the next year, Californian citizens began to talk about who they called the East Area Rapist, but at the time, however, nobody could have known that the East Area Rapist was the same man as the Visalia Ransacker. And then...
So this might be a little bit repetitive of what Josh just said at the beginning. So on September 11th, 1975, as you said, DeAngelo broke into the home of the Snelling family. He attempted to kidnap 16-year-old Elizabeth, or Beth Snelling. Hupp Snelling, sorry.
Yeah, I'm assuming that it's down as Hupp because
it might be a married
name maybe, yeah. But that's what I was coming up for when I was...
Yeah. Now, her father Claude, as Josh said, he was woken by strange noises. He went to investigate. He caught DeAngelo trying to take his daughter and was unfortunately shot twice. He then stumbled back into the house and later died from the wounds. Now, after shooting Claude, DeAngelo fled the scene without Elizabeth, but first he kicked her 3 times in the face.
Ow.
The last known activity attributed to the Visalia Ransacker was on September 12th, 1975, so just the next day. At around 8:30 p.m, he entered the backyard of 1505 W. Kauai Avenue. This was an area that the ransacker was known to frequent, and it just so happened that Detective William McGowan was on a stakeout inside the garage of that house.
Oh. What are the odds?
What are the odds? And he caught DeAngelo prowling. I had to think of his name there. Caught him prowling. And after McGowan fired a warning shot, DeAngelo pretended to surrender before jumping the fence and quickly pulling his gun out and shooting at Detective McGowan. Now, he shot at his head, but luckily he only managed to shatter the detective's flashlight, but he did manage to escape as a result. Evidence collected by police included the broken flashlight, tracks from DeAngelo's tennis shoes, and some blue chip stamps, which when I looked it up, it's basically like a Tesco Club card, like you get discounts and things.
Oh, okay.
And as well, this is so random, a sock full of coins.
That is so...
that he had dropped. Like...
Yeah, what? Why? Oh, weapon.
Maybe, just a little...
The same way you'd... Yeah. That'd work.
Yeah, I mean, it would, yeah. Strange, though.
Convenient, though.
'cause
Easy
it's
to
so
get without no one knowing you have...
I suppose it wouldn't be noisy if you tied it up tight enough.
Yeah. Like make a knot underneath the coins and then
I'm
use
sorry,
the rest.
this is not something I should be joking about, but just imagine someone hitting you with a sock full of coins and all you hear is ching, ching, ching goes the money tree.
Yeah, before I get a slap, I already know they've more money than me.
Yeah. Look at the heft of that sock. You're a rich man.
Fuck's sake, like.
Fair time.
So then we move on to the East Area Rapist section of the podcast. So Joseph DeAngelo moved to the Sacramento area in 1976. This is when and where his crimes escalated from burglar. I can never pronounce that word. Burglary to rape, with the exception of the murder of Claude Snelling and attempted kidnapping of Elizabeth Hupp during his time as the Visalia Ransacker. And I say with the exception because I'm like, kidnap and a murder is an escalation from burglary, you can't just say escalated from burglary to rape when those things happen. But the murder was completely...
He didn't go straight from just burglary to rape.
Yeah, there was murder in there, even though it was
Elizabeth, as far as I know, was the first time he tried to kidnap.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm sure it was. So there was that and it went wrong, and then there was the, ending up having to kill Claude to cover his tracks or to make sure that Claude couldn't overpower him, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
So bar those, this is where he escalated. At first, the crimes were centred on the then unincorporated areas of Carmichael, Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova, east of Rancho Cordova and east of Sacramento. So, unincorporated, I've spoke about that in a previous episode. If you don't know what it means, look it up because I'm not going through it again. DeAngelo's initial MO was to stalk middle-class neighbourhoods at night time to search for women who were alone in one-storey homes, typically near a school, creek, trail or other open space that would provide him with a quick escape. Now, also, just note how I keep saying DeAngelo, but remember, at the time, they did not know who it was.
It's just because we know who he is.
Exactly, we know now. So while he was spotted multiple times, he always managed to get away successfully. On one occasion, he shot and seriously injured a young pursuer. I didn't really see any more on that. Most of the victims had seen or heard someone prowling on their property before the attacks, and many had also experienced break-ins. Police believed that the perpetrator would extensively scout out a target neighbourhood, looking through windows, prowling around yards, before choosing which home he was going to attack. So he was doing his research. It was also believed that he would sometimes enter homes of future victims to unlock windows, unload guns, plant ligatures to use later. So, he was really planning.
Yeah. I will say... Sorry, my voice is fucked, but I will say he's very intelligent.
But again, that's the thing with so many serial killers. They all have above average IQ.
They're scarily intelligent. It's terrifying. I'm scared of smart people now.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm dumb.
Yeah, it's a cover-up because you're smart. Should I be scared?
Yes, I'm actually planning on murdering you after this podcast.
Well, I'm smart too, so try me, bitch.
Try me, shoot me.
So,
bitch.
Anywho, oh yeah, and he would also often phone future victims, sometimes for months in advance, to learn their routine. So I suppose if you're phoning them, you're kind of going to get an idea when they're home, because I'm assuming it means home phone.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was the 70s.
Yeah, exactly.
70s, 80s, there wouldn't have been mobile phones.
Was there not, though? I thought there was, but they were only the ones you only, they were the big blocks.
I think they came out in, the very late 80s, early 90s. Okay.
But yeah, so the home phones, and then you'd know he'd get an idea of when they're home, when they're not home, Even though Joseph DeAngelo started out targeting women who were alone in their homes or with children, he later preferred to attack couples. It is believed that this change in MO was due to media reports claiming that he only attacked women alone in their home. So okay, you think you can predict what I'm going to do, fuck you.
Yeah.
Or I'm not scared of extra people or a man.
Yeah, fuck y'all.
DeAngelo's usual method...
more than your expectations of me.
Exactly. He had something to prove, apparently. DeAngelo's usual method was to break in through a window or a sliding glass door and wake up the sleeping occupants with a flashlight, threatening them with a handgun. Victims were then bound with ligatures, often shoelaces, that he either found or had brought with him. The victims were then blindfolded and gagged with towels that he had ripped into strips. The female victim was typically forced to tie up her partner before she was tied up by DeAngelo. The victims were often bound so tight that their hands were numb for hours after being untied. Yeah. DeAngelo would then separate the couple, often piling dishes on the male's back, and would threaten to kill everyone in the house if he heard them rattle.
I've seen that in an episode of Criminal Minds, I'm sure.
Doesn't sound familiar to me, and I just finished the rewatch.
I've seen it in some crime show.
But it does, yeah.
But that's
probably where it was inspired from.
That's so awful. That is so awful, man. Like, imagine, like, not only is the woman...
You'd be afraid to fucking breathe.
Like, not only is the woman traumatised from what she's going through, but her husband, her boyfriend, her partner is also traumatised because they're literally in the other room and they cannot move.
They can't even try and sneak away to do something because there's the plates on their back.
And those plates will fall and they will make noise.
From a serial killing point of view, a very smart move to make in terms of trying to preserve the scene and not make anyone be able to get help.
Yeah.
Like, what am I looking for? A very smart way of trying to stay in control.
Yes.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yes, it's a power move.
It's a sick way.
Yeah.
Where was I? Oh yeah. He would then move the woman to the living room and rape her, often repeatedly. It was later reported by police that DeAngelo repeatedly said, "I hate you, Bonnie," during a 1978 rape, the 37th attack.
Bonnie Jean Caldwell.
Joseph DeAngelo would at times spend hours in a home, raiding closets, drawers, eating food in the kitchen, drinking beer, raping the women again, or making more threats. Victims sometimes thought he had left the house before he would jump out from the dark. He would usually...
God.
Yeah. And then again, as we've already mentioned, he continued to usually steal items, usually personal objects of little value, but occasionally cash and firearms. He would then creep away, leaving the victims unsure of if he had actually left or not. He is believed to have escaped on foot through a series of gardens and then use a bicycle to go home or to a car, making use of parks, schoolyards, creek beds and other open spaces that kind of kept him off the street and out of sight.
I did actually forget to mention he left a stolen bicycle behind after fleeing the Snelling scene.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I can't remember if he left it at their house or a couple of doors down.
But he was found nearby.
But it was found nearby, yeah.
If the shoe fits.
Yeah.
The East Area Rapist operated in Sacramento County from the initial attacks in June of 1976 until May of 1977. After a break of 3 months, he struck in nearby San Joaquin.
San Joaquin.
Oh yeah, because it's like...
like Joaquin Phoenix.
That's it.
Yeah.
San Joaquin... Quinoa. San Joaquin County in September of 1977 before going back to Sacramento for all but one of the next 10 attacks. The rapist attacked 5 times during the summer of 1978 in Stanislaus and Yolo counties, before again disappearing for 3 months, and the attacks then moved primarily to Contra Costa County in October 1978 and continued until July of 1979.
So now, before I get into the rapes, I just want to say that I haven't included any names here out of respect for the victims. What are you whispering to me?
Secrets of love. I just took a brief pause there so I could finish my whispering. And now, over to you, Tanya.
So I'm going to just start that a little bit again, but we've left in what's there, so you're hearing it twice. Very repetitive tonight, guys. Now, before I get into the rapes, I just wanted to say, before Josh started whispering his secrets of love to me, that I have not included any names here out of respect for the victims and their families. This section will be quite brief compared to, well, mainly to your sections because you always get stuck with the long sections. It will be quite brief, but that is done with a purpose. So between June and December of 1976, DeAngelo was responsible for 10 rapes in Rancho Cordova, Carmichael and Citrus Heights. Between January and December of 1977, he was responsible for 19 rapes in the areas mentioned previously, just there. And as well in Sacramento, Arden Arcade, Orangevale, Parkway, Stockton, La Riviera and Foothill Farms. Between January and December 1978, he committed 15 rapes in Carmichael, Stockton, Sacramento, Modesto, Davis, Concord, San Ramon, San Jose and Danville. And between March and July of 1979, he committed 6 rapes in Rancho Cordova, Fremont, Walnut Creek, Danville, and then Walnut Creek and Danville again. Now, that is a total of 50 rapes over the span of 3 years. 3 years. That's 50 women, and I don't know how many partners were involved that were traumatised by the actions of this sick individual.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Like, when you put it into perspective like that, like, over the space of 3 years, he ruined... Well, I don't want to say he ruined their lives, because I'm sure they're all survivors and they're all fighters and they came back and they lived their lives as they wanted to, but he left them with trauma.
So then we move on to murders. So, like, I'm going to start off with his first murders. Obviously, this is with the exception of Claude Snelling and the attempted murder of, what was his name, William McGowan. So on the 2nd of February 1978, Brian Maguire, aged 21 and a sergeant in the Air Force, and his wife Katie, aged 20, were on an evening walk with their dog in the Rancho Cordova neighbourhood. DeAngelo shot Brian first, and Katie began to run away shouting for help, but DeAngelo caught up with her and shot her in the head. Both Brian and Katie died from their wounds in hospital. At the scene of the murders, investigators found a single pre-tied shoelace a few feet from where Brian was lying. The type of knot that was tied in the lace was consistent with the most common of the East Area Rapists' knots. They were pre-tied as a ligature instead of just being a straight shoelace. The FBI announced on the 15th of June 2016 that they were confident the East Area Rapist had murdered the Maguires. And on the 29th of June 2020 is when DeAngelo pled guilty to these specific murders.
I feel like I'm going to regret asking this question, but what happened to the dog?
I actually don't know.
Okay, that's okay. That's fine. So not too long after his last rape in Danville on July 5th, 1979, DeAngelo moved to Southern California. And this is when he, like Josh said, began killing his victims, usually by bludgeoning them to death or shooting them. As he was not linked to these crimes for so long, he was given the name Night Stalker, but this was later changed to Original Night Stalker when Richard Ramirez came on the scene and became known as the Night Stalker.
Yeah. So then on the 1st of October 1979, DeAngelo broke into a home in Goleta, a town located in Southern California. DeAngelo woke the couple up, shining a flashlight at them as they lay in bed. He instructed them to get on their stomachs and not to move or he would kill them. DeAngelo ordered the woman to tie up the man's hands and supplied her with shoelaces. The woman, naked and obviously terrified, did as she was told. DeAngelo then tied the woman's hands, and she could feel the circulation being cut off from how tight her hands were being tied. Now, both victims' ankles were also tied, but the woman's ankles were tied loosely in comparison to the man's. DeAngelo claimed he was looking for money and the woman told him her purse was in the kitchen. He then left the bedroom where the couple were tied up, and they could hear him going around other areas of the house before returning. DeAngelo said that he couldn't find the purse and the woman told him it was on the kitchen sink. DeAngelo then removed the ties on her ankles before demanding she show him where it was. He then made her lie on the floor of the living room and tied her ankles again. He then told her to turn over and she could feel the flashlight moving over her naked body as she felt his eyes watching her. The woman could also hear him... Wait for this. The woman could also hear him rubbing himself.
Oh, God.
So, you know...
That's disgusting.
That sounds like what y'all think it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
DeAngelo walked away from her and she rolled back onto her stomach. She could hear that he was in the kitchen and then walking down the hallway and back beside her again. DeAngelo knelt at her shoulder and put a pair of shorts over her head to blindfold her. Knowing that she and her partner would be murdered, when DeAngelo walked back to the kitchen before walking down the hall, she managed to get onto her feet and began hopping to the front door. She tripped and fell into the wall, as she still couldn't see due to the shorts used to blindfold her. She managed to get to the door and open it, and fortunately the bindings on her ankles fell off, making it much easier for her to run outside while screaming for help. But unfortunately DeAngelo caught up to her after hearing her and grabbed her, throwing her to the ground. DeAngelo then pulled her to her feet and dragged her back inside, tying her ankles once again. The woman's boyfriend heard her scream again and knew she was, that she was about to be killed, or that he would kill her. He swung his naked body out of the bed and hopped to the sliding glass door that led to the backyard, opened it and hopped outside towards the fence. He hit against the fence as hard as he could in an attempt to jar the boards of the fence apart. The fence held and the man fell against the ground behind some bushes. He saw the flashlight beam as DeAngelo searched the backyard. The man rolled behind an orange tree and waited. I said that as if the tree was the colour orange, but it's orange as in the fruit.
It's an orange tree.
Once he had seen DeAngelo go back inside, he went and stood at the fence and began to yell out for help. Again, the man fell and hid behind the tree. The woman, still inside the house, managed to free her feet again, and she could hear a vehicle leaving the area, so she moved toward the bedroom. Unfortunately, the shorts blindfolding her had moved enough so that she could see with one eye. She noticed that her boyfriend wasn't in the bedroom, so she attempted to cover herself with a bathrobe and ran to the front door. While leaving the house, her bathrobe fell off. She saw car lights and began screaming, and the car screeched to a halt in front of her. At about 2 a.m, deputies received a phone call about a woman screaming in the area of Queen Anne and Kellogg. The person who was reporting the incident was actually an FBI agent who was off duty at the time and was in pursuit of a male on a bicycle seen leaving the house. When the deputies arrived at the scene, they found the woman naked and screaming hysterically on her front lawn, and the woman's boyfriend was found still hidden in the backyard. Unfortunately, the FBI agent had lost the perpetrator, who had abandoned the bicycle and ran between houses on San Patricio to get away. The bicycle he had used had been stolen earlier from a home in North Patterson Avenue, and as well as the bicycle, a black-handled steak knife was found. Investigators found several shoe impressions in the neighbouring yards that matched the impressions found in the backyard of the victims, as well as similar shoe impressions found near where the bicycle had been stolen earlier in the night. The suspect, who we now know to be Joseph James DeAngelo, was described as 5'10" or 11", white, wearing a Pendleton-type shirt and a ski mask. The suspect also had some sort of a holster attached to the right side of his belt and had apparently used a screwdriver-type tool to pry open the sliding glass door in order to enter the house. So that's that incident in October.
Okay.
Now we're moving on to December.
Thank God that couple, well, I don't believe in God, but thank whoever,
yeah.
That couple survived. Like, I'm sure they were no doubt traumatised.
But at least they got out of it with their lives.
But he is both the luckiest and unluckiest son of a bitch I've ever come across, because he's run into the police, twice now?
Yeah.
And
a police officer and an FBI
agent, and he's managed to escape both times.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that would inflate the sense of ego. Oh, no one can get me, I'm invincible.
Absolutely, like, I can't be stopped, yeah.
On the 29th of December 1979, so the same year, just over 2 months later, starting sometime after 4 p.m, 5 burglaries took place in Goleta. Sliding glass doors had been pried open on 4 of the break-ins. Side gates were found to open, and at 11:15 p.m, a family who were on their way home to their Windsor Court home saw someone walk past the window inside of their house. So this person was already in their house. The suspect ran out of the back of their house and jumped over the back fence. The family's small poodle had been beaten to death.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was not okay when I read that. Because animals. So swiftly moving on. Around 5 hours after the suspect fled the Windsor Court home, Robert Offerman, a 44-year-old doctor, and his companion Deborah Alexandria Manning, a 35-year-old psychologist. Yeah, I know. And it was really strange because some places were just calling her Deborah Manning and other places were calling her Alexandria Manning and leaving out Deborah. Huh. So I just went with the full lot.
I like it.
So Deborah Alexandria Manning, a 35-year-old psychologist, were murdered in Robert's Avenida condo. The deputies who responded to the scene found the victims in the master bedroom. Deborah was naked and lying on the bed with a bullet wound to the back of her head, with her hands tied behind her back. Robert was also naked and had 4 bullet wounds to his upper torso, 1 of them being on the upper chest and 3 to his back. Robert was on the floor on his knees, head on the floor with his buttocks in the air. There was also a white cord around his left wrist. The thermostat and all the lights were off. It did not seem that any ransacking had taken place. There were pry marks on the sliding glass door, and food scraps were found in a plastic bag on the back patio. Shoe impressions found on the soft dirt in the backyard were determined to be from Adidas tennis shoes, and they were the same shape, design and size of the shoe impressions that were found at the incident that occurred on October 1st. So we have a match footprint-wise.
During his tennis shoes.
He did. During a canvass of the neighbourhood, investigators found out that several... This is what I never get, and this happens more than once. Like, not blaming anyone, but still. During a canvass of the neighbourhood, investigators found out that several neighbours had heard gunshots at about 3 a.m. One neighbour reported they heard one shot, a pause, and then 3 shots one after the other, another pause, and then 1 shot. The same neighbour also reported that her son's bicycle had been stolen during that night. Oh wait, it wasn't that part. Okay, it's okay. It's fine.
Okay.
It's all good. I'm not angry yet. Yes. The killer had used a .38 caliber revolver loaded with Supervel brand. A .38 caliber ammunition with 110 grain jacketed bullets. I don't know what any of that means. The weapon was likely a Smith & Wesson. I know what that means. Revolver. Even though, here we are. Even though several neighbours had heard gunshots, nobody had called the sheriff's department.
Oh, I fucking hate the bystander effect. If you hear screaming, if you hear gunshots, if you think your neighbour's being murdered, do not sit there, please do not sit there and think to yourself, well, someone else has heard it, someone else is going to call the police. Call the fucking police. It doesn't matter if the police get 5 calls about the situation in one night.
As soon as you ring and the dispatcher answers, they'll be like, yes, we're aware there's officers on their way. Thank you for calling.
Just call. It's free. It takes like 2 minutes.
It's free.
It is free.
I know, but that's just such a funny standout point to me.
It's not going to cost you anything.
There's no terms and conditions apply here.
Just do it. Just call the fucking cops.
And then the last little bit, it had also been discovered that the residence next door to Robert Offerman's had also been broken into, but that condo was actually empty and for sale at the time. So if there was people living there, they probably would have been the victims.
Mm-hmm. So probably he went in there first, realised it was empty and was like, oh, moved on. Next door.
Yeah, and next door was home.
So on March 16th, 1980, 12-year-old Gary Smith arrived at the home of his father and stepmother to mow the lawn. According to my research, his father, Lyman, had grown up rough and had worked hard to become an attorney and wanted to ensure that his son worked for his allowance and understood the value of money. His stepmother, Charlene, was a well-liked woman, an interior designer, and made her own jewellery.
They sound like such a perfect American family.
Yeah, no, apparently there was some issues in the relationship.
But of course.
I didn't think it was necessary.
It's not necessary, and tomato, there's issues in every relationship, regardless how big or small.
It wasn't relevant to what happened. So Gary tried the back door that the gardeners would use, but was surprised to find it was locked. So then he tried the front door, and it was open. So he went inside, making his way to the master bedroom, only to discover the bodies of his father and stepmother, Charlene.
That is awful.
They were in bed under the covers. Gary had initially not wanted to disturb them, thinking perhaps they were sleeping.
Bless.
But he pulled back the covers and saw his dad lying on his stomach with his head very clearly bashed in. Immediately, Gary called 911, and when police arrived, they found the 12-year-old boy sitting on the porch. When they entered the house, they noticed it appeared to have been rifled through, and that the mattress on the bed in the spare room was crooked. They said it seemed like someone might have been jumping on the bed or something to say the mattress was crooked.
Okay.
Lyman was found on his stomach, naked and bloodied, and Charlene lay next to him on her back, wearing only a t-shirt. Both had clearly been bludgeoned to death, and both were tied with a cord off the drapes. They were both tied with drapery cords, which I assumed to be cords off the drapes, but it could very well have been cords that he brought with him. The murder weapon, a log taken from their own wood pile, lay in between them, coated in blood, and there was blood splatter on the wall above them.
Jesus Christ.
The assistant coroner... Let me just take a second.
I love it.
The assistant coroner... Dr. Peter Speth noticed that the knot used on Charlene was quite elaborate. It was a diamond knot known to be used mostly by sailors at sea or people in the Navy.
Yes.
So this knot was not used on Lyman, which would track with his previous MO of getting the woman to tie up the partner. And the cord Charlene was tied with was actually different to Lyman's. It had copper in the middle.
Okay.
So it was more of a sturdy cord.
Firmer, yeah.
And only Charlene's wrists were bound, whereas Lyman's wrists and ankles were bound. Now, it didn't say in my research whether Charlene was sexually assaulted. Investigators found fibres of an unknown origin on Lyman's ankles and realised that the couple was most likely killed 3 days prior on March 13th. Milk was left on the back porch and letters had piled up on the front porch over the 3 days, adding proof to this theory, as well as reports from neighbours that they hadn't seen the couple in a few days.
Yeah.
So then all was quiet until August 21st, 1980, when Roger Harrington visited his home in Cockleshell. His son Keith was living there with his new wife Patty. They were planning on living there until Keith graduated med school. And Patty, who was 4 years older than her husband at 28, was a nurse. The couple had been married for about 3 months, and Roger was very surprised to find that the front door was unlocked, as this wasn't like Keith and Patty. The house was silent when he entered, and he received no response when he yelled out a hello. He thought maybe they had gone out, but when he checked the garage, both of their cars were there. There was groceries still in a bag in the kitchen, and while nothing in the bag was perishable, he still thought it was strange that it hadn't been put away.
Yeah, and that nobody's answering, and that both the cars are there, do you know?
Exactly. So Roger ventured down the hallway to Keith and Patty's bedroom, and when he opened the door, he saw that the bed was made, but there were bodies in it. Now, thinking that they were sleeping, same as Gary Smith thought of his dad and his stepmom, Roger pulled the bedspread down, only to find his son face down, head turned to his left shoulder, and his skin was purple. He'd very clearly been dead for a few days. He'd been hit in the head, but there was no blood. Patty was next to him on her stomach, and her face was also turned to the left, but there was blood everywhere, and she had also been beaten on the head. Both of them were still in their sleep clothes. Now, Roger stumbled from the house and called the police and was told to sit and wait in his car until they arrived. And this time the murder weapon was not left at the scene, but it was discovered that Patty had pieces of brass in her head wound. Now, at the time, Roger had been putting brass sprinklers in, so it's possible one of these was used. Patty had been raped, and both victims had originally been bound, hands behind their back, with brown macrame cord, but it had been cut and some left on Keith's lower back. Investigators also discovered the couple had been bludgeoned with the duvet over their heads. So, like, the duvet was covering them and he beat them through the duvet. But this meant that...
I suppose to prevent getting blood on himself.
Mm-hmm. So this meant that the killer, DeAngelo, had bound both of them, killed them, then removed the duvet, cut the bindings and recovered them again. Now, as with the Smith murders, there was no sign of forced entry to the house.
Yeah.
So it's not known how he got into both of those houses. So I just, as I was researching this, it really broke my heart that a 12-year-old boy had to find his dad and his stepmother, and then a 62-year-old man had to find his son and his daughter-in-law, and both had been, like, both cases, they were
brutal,
absolutely brutal.
It's
like
awful.
It's heartbreaking to think, like.
So then we move on to the 6th of February 1981. Manuela Withon, who was 28 years old, was murdered while lying on her bed. The cause of death was a fracture to the skull, obviously because of trauma to the head. Yep. Now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that surname right, but anyhow. Manuela was found lying in a sleeping bag on her bed. The killer, DeAngelo, took his murder weapon away with him, again in this instance. I don't know why he all of a sudden started to take them away. Ligature marks were on both of Manuela's wrists and on her right ankle. A rear sliding glass door had pry marks and damage to its frame. Several tennis-type shoe impressions were found in the backyard. Wooden matches were found in front of the door that led to the garage and in the flower bed beside the garage. Similar matches had also been found at another of the murder scenes. During a canvass of the neighbourhood, a female neighbour who was living directly behind Manuela's residence said that she returned home at around 11 p.m. and noticed that her deadbolt was not locked. And she said it was strange, but she didn't notice anything else being, different or disturbed, so she went to bed, not thinking anything of it. But I suppose it could imply that he was in
her house first. And when she wasn't there, he moved on to Manuela's house.
So on and that's it on that. That's very short. I think the next one's relatively short as well. On the 2070th,
The 2070th, yeah.
the 27th of July 1981, Cherry Domingo, 35 years old, and her friend Gregory Sanchez, 27 years old, were found murdered in Gregory's house in Toltec Way. The deputies who responded to the incident found no evidence of forced entry. However, a small window in the master bedroom was open. Now, the window screen had been removed and was found hidden nearby. The window, however, was too small to enter the house, true, but detectives found they could reach in and unlock the door, which accessed the bathroom from the outside. I've never heard of that before.
So strange. I mean, maybe the house was remodeled and it used to be a door for a different part of the house.
Yeah, I don't know, because I'd never heard of anything like that before. A door you can get into a house through a bathroom.
This is totally off topic, but you know what like gets me is, you know, when you see a house that has a front door on the second story.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I saw someone said recently, because I follow this account called Cheap Old Houses on Instagram, and they just post like really pretty houses that like are vintage and need some work, or just...
Is that the one with the grape chandelier? The
grape chandelier. Oh, we have to put that on the story, right? So there was this one house. Now, architecturally, it was gorgeous, but the chandelier had grapes hanging from it, and it was like the most awful shade of green. It was like green screen green. Like the room was painted that colour. But anyway, I digress. But I saw someone commented on one of their posts recently, because it was a gorgeous house, gorgeous front door, and then there was another front door matching that directly above it, and someone was like, oh, there must have been a porch or something, or what's it called? A balcony.
Oh, this would make sense.
So maybe that's what it is, because I know
Yeah, because nowadays if you see a front door upstairs and downstairs, it's normally apartments.
Yeah, but still, how are they going to access the apartment if the door is just hanging there?
They're going to have to get, you know, the thing they use to board planes? Stairs. Yeah. Whatever you call those types of stairs.
But sorry, back to the case.
But they'll have to get one of, like, you know, like a smart one. Like, you know, like the Tesla cars, how you can move it from your phone.
Oh, like my dishwasher?
Yeah. But, like, you know, with the Tesla cars, you can actually drive your car from your phone. Like, you can move it back and all that.
Scares me.
So do the same thing, but with the stairs. So that when you're inside and you lock the door, just move it backwards. No one can bother you.
There we go. There'll be no Joseph
bars
James
on the downstairs
DeAngelo breaking
windows,
into
so.
my house.
But anyway, so Gregory was found naked and lying face down on the floor, partially inside the closet of the bedroom. He had a gunshot wound to his cheek. This wound was not fatal. His cause of death had been from 24 blunt force wounds to his head. Oh. The killer had taken clothing from the closet and placed them over Gregory's head after he had died. There was no evidence that Gregory had been bound. Cherry was also found naked. She was lying on the bed and was completely covered by the bedding. She was face down and both arms were behind her back. There were ligature marks on her wrists and ankles, indicating that she had been bound with her ankles over her buttocks and tied to her wrists.
Hogtied.
Yeah. Cherry had been killed with one blow to the head with the same weapon used to kill Gregory. Investigators concluded that Gregory had been shot while in a kneeling position. He fell to the floor and was hit in the head. Gregory later got up and was again hit by the killer, and he stumbled to the closet and died. During the canvass of the neighbourhood, Q being pissed off again.
Okay, go on.
During a canvass of the neighbourhood, one neighbour said they had heard a gunshot between 3:20 and 3:35 a.m. They then heard a scream and said that the dogs in the area barked for about half an hour. They did not call the sheriff's department.
Why?
Other neighbours had also heard the gunshot, but not one of them reported it.
I'm going to headbutt the steering wheel.
Yeah. One neighbour stated that he saw a man standing behind a large tree at around 9:45 p.m. on the night of the murders, so obviously earlier.
Let me guess. He didn't call the police either.
Well, I suppose there's no need at that point. It's a bit odd, but it's not a reason to call the police.
I suppose I would, because I'm paranoid.
There's
a man standing out in the tree.
And they'd be like, yeah, look, there's nothing we can do. Ciao.
He's prowling.
Purring. Yeah, another neighbour said that he and his wife were out walking in the neighbourhood at around 10 p.m. when they noticed a man following them. At one point, the man was about 6 to 10 feet behind them. The subject was described as young, 5'11" in height, slender build with blonde hair to his neck and length.
Okay, so then...
So a lot of these descriptions add up.
Yeah, it seems like everything was quiet then until May 4th, 1986. So that's quite a break. That's what, 5 years?
Yes, I think so. Was it 1981 I did?
Yeah. So May 4th, 1986, Janelle Cruz was at home with a friend. While they sat in her bedroom, they heard noises outside. It sounded as if someone was closing the gate or the garage door, but when they looked out, they saw nobody. Janelle was quite frustrated by this, as earlier she had heard noises, but when she looked out again, she saw nothing.
Shit.
Now, at around 10:45 p.m, Janelle's friend left, and Janelle went out to get some things. A neighbour heard her return at about 11:15 and said that they knew she was alone, as they had only heard one of the car doors close. Now, a real estate agent came by the house the next day at 5 p.m. and unfortunately found Janelle dead. Unlike previous cases, Janelle was known to be forgetful with locking her door.
So it could have just been... He could have just literally walked in if that was the case.
So it would have, it would have made it easier for DeAngelo to gain access to the house.
Of all countries,
I know,
I would forget to lock my door, and America's not one of them.
I know.
But then again, when you've grown up somewhere and you're so used to it,
And
maybe that takes that away from
home,
that.
Like, it was home,
Yeah.
She probably felt safe there, and like it's obviously not her fault that she
Oh,
got
of course
murdered.
not, no.
It's just unfortunately
Yeah.
she was forgetful when it came to locking her door.
But then again, who knows? She could have locked the door that night.
You never know, it might have been the one night she remembered.
You know.
Maybe he was already in the house, but because if
But
the
seems
garage
likely.
door was opening and closing, maybe he got in that way and he was already in the house waiting for her when she got back.
Yeah.
Because it does seem that he surprised her in the kitchen and hit her on the forehead. Blood around the kitchen, on the cabinets and things like that supports that theory. And there was also
And it's
blood.
a change from the bedroom scenario.
No, he did bring her to the bedroom.
Okay.
There was blood
never
around the
mind.
bedroom as well. Now, based on the blood spatter, it seems like Janelle really put up a fight, like she fought for her life. But when he bound her, I suppose it was a lot more difficult for her to
Of
fight
course,
back.
what can you do?
She was a bit more subdued. So she was found almost naked, lying diagonally across her bed with her bra pulled down to her waist. There were blankets covering her head, and when they were removed, her face was beaten in quite violently. Her neck and shoulders were covered in blood, and she had been violently raped. Like, this seems to have been a much more violent attack
Than
some of the others. Now,
yeah.
they were all violent, they
Of
were all
course.
horrible, but this just seems to have had that extra degree of violence.
Yeah.
So blades of grass were found on several spots around the bed, as well as tracks from tennis shoes.
Surprise, surprise.
And lint from a bath towel was found in her mouth. It's thought that she
Okay.
was gagged, but the gag was removed, and I don't think it was at the scene. And investigators believe that Janelle struggled much less after being bound. The murder weapon was not found at the scene, but it was noted that a pipe wrench was missing from the back garden. Her stepfather came out and said that his pipe wrench was missing from the back garden.
Okay, so...
Yeah.
You know, more than likely.
Was probably the murder
The
weapon.
weapon, yeah.
So it seems that for a lot of the murders, he kind of used weapons of opportunity, like the log from the log pile, possibly a brass sprinkler.
A lot of the time stuff might not have been brought with. It's just taking... I suppose, to be fair, any household you go into is going to have something you could bludgeon someone with, even if it's nowhere far using as a weapon.
But it's
There's going
something-
to be something heavy and thick around
Yeah.
in some
In some way,
capacity,
shape or
whether
form.
it's in the garden before you go in, or whether it's in the house, in the kitchen, or, whatnot.
Yeah, it's your turn, but I'm
so-
just thinking there, will we just continue on?
I was thinking, I think there's no point making
It's not
it
going to be a
two-parter.
two-parter, guys. It's just going to be really long.
Exactly. So, let's keep rock and rolling.
Rocking and rolling. Rock and rolling the Corolla.
You know? So, now we're moving on to communications. So, I'm going to jump right in with a poem that was sent.
Poetry.
Yes.
They love poetry.
Yeah.
They fucking love
It's that
poetry.
high IQ when
Yeah.
they're not out murdering people. In December of 1977, a mysterious poem was received at the Sacramento Bee newspaper, the city mayor's office, and KVIE 6 TV station. The poem they all received a copy of was called Excitement's Crave, which I think is a shit name. It has
on,
never
do
been
better.
100% determined, but it is believed that this was the work of the killer we now know is DeAngelo. So the poem reads, "All those mortals surviving birth, upon facing maturity, take inventory of their worth to prevailing society. Choosing values becomes a task, oneself must seek satisfaction. The selected route will unmask character when plans take action, accepting some work to perform, at fixed pay but promise for more, is a recognised social norm, as is decorum seeking lore. Achieving while others lifting should be cause for deserving fame. Leisure tempts excitement seeking, what's right and expected seems tame. Jesse James has been seen by all, and Son of Sam has an author. Others now feel temptation's call. Sacramento should make an offer. To make a movie of my life that will pay for my planned exile. Just now I'd like to add the wife of a mafia lord to my file. Your East Area Rapist and deserving pest. See you in the press or on TV.
That's a shit poem. That's a really shit poem.
I'm not a fan.
So in December 1978, there was a rape in Danville. That was one of the rapes that was kind of briefly touched on earlier.
Okay.
And some notebook pages were found. Now, this is often referred to as the homework evidence. And this was collected after a bloodhound tracked the rapist, DeAngelo, from the scene to some nearby railroad tracks where the trail stopped abruptly. It's thought that DeAngelo got into his car and accidentally dropped the pages in the process, or while rifling through a bag, or like the pocket of the car, like down here.
Yeah.
So the first page appeared to be a homework assignment, an essay on General Custer. The second page was more of like a journal entry or therapy exercise, where he writes about a teacher he had in 6th grade, and I'm going to read it now. There's a lot of misspellings and things, so I'm going to read it as it's written, as much as it pains me.
Yeah, that's me when that happens too. So,
mad is the word that reminds me of 6th grade. I hated that year. I wish I had known what was going to be going on during my 6th grade year, the last and worst year of elementary school. Mad is the word that remains in my head about my dreadful year as a 6th grader. My madness was one that was caused by disappointments that hurt me very much. Disappointments from my teacher, such as field trips, field spelled wrong, that were planned, then cancelled. He spelled cancelled wrong as well. My 6th grade teacher gave me... Planed, then cancelled. My 6th grade teacher gave me a lot of disappointments, which made me very mad and made me build a state of hatred in my heart. No one ever let me down that hard before, and I never hated anyone as much as I did him because he cancelled a fucking field trip.
That's very, I hope this was wrote as a child, not as an adult, because...
See, I mean, I imagine it probably was an old notebook or something. Disappointment wasn't the only reason that made me mad in my 6th grade class. Another was getting in trouble at school, especially, again spelt wrong, talking. That's what really bugged me, was writing sentences. Those awful sentences that my teacher made ... me write. Hours and hours I'd sit and write 50 to 100 to 150 sentences day and night. I write those dreadful paragraphs which embarrassed me, and more important, it made me ashamed of myself, which in turn, deep down inside, made me realise that writing sentence wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to make me suffer like that. It just wasn't fair to make me sit and write until my bones ached, spelled ached wrong, until my hand felt very horrid pain it ever had. And as I wrote, I got madder and madder, spelled wrong, until I cried. I cried because I was ashamed, and I cried because I was disgusted, with a C, disgusted. I cried because I was mad, and I cried for myself, kid who kept on having to write those Dane sentences. My angriness from 6th grade will scar my memory for life, and I will be ashamed for my 6th grade year forever. Come out the fucking fog. Your teacher made you write sentences. Anytime I didn't bring my homework into biology, Mr. Butler would literally just make us sit down and copy the entire index, like the entire page of the index. Yeah, I
remember those.
I didn't fucking hate him for it though. He was one of my favourite teachers.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
The third and final page was a hand-drawn map. Investigators examined it thoroughly and found that the unusual markings on the land area of the map they examined the unusual markings on the land area of the map and figured out that they represented a change of grade and elevation for drainage purposes. Apparently, it also showed that roofing was an area of interest to DeAngelo, but I suppose at the time they didn't know it was DeAngelo. And there was 2 symbols on the bottom right side of the page that were standard indicators showing left and right side elevations of a house, suggesting roof lines. This led investigators to believe that the perpetrator possibly worked or had an interest or a history in landscape architecture, civil engineering, or land use planning. Attempts to find the area depicted on the map were unsuccessful, and it's believed by Detective Larry Poole that the drawing is similar to the Golden State Killer's preferred hunting grounds and was like a fantasy drawing that he did. Now, on the back of the map, there were doodles, girls' names, and the word punishment written in dark black writing with the letter P placed backwards. And above this is some faint writing, which Detective Poole believes reads "come from Snelling." And after looking at the map myself, I would be inclined to agree that it does say that.
Okay.
Now, it is faint, but you can see the letters "come from" quite clearly. I don't know if it's just the fact that I had read that he thought it said Snelling that made me see the word Snelling, but I do think it looks like it says "come from Snelling." What are they doing?
I don't know. I think it's some...
Why did you have your hazards on?
He's trying to deliver food, but I don't think he can find the house.
Oh.
By the looks of things.
If it's vegetarian, we'll take it.
Well, if it's vegan, I'll take it.
We'll take
as
it.
Well. Yeah. I don't think it is, though.
Oh, well.
Bye, sir. Anyway, are we moving?
It's your turn, my
so
friend.
this is just a little introduction because Tanya's going to start off with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So, phone calls. There have been multiple.
We can't talk tonight. Usually it's one of us, but tonight it's both of us.
It's both. We're in sync.
Yes.
There are multiple phone calls attributed as having been made by the killer to either law enforcement, news outlets, victims, and even one to a counselling service.
I'm a murderer, please help me.
That's basically where it goes.
So on March 18th, 1977, 3 calls were made to the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office from a man claiming to be the East Side Rapist. Now, none of these calls were recorded. The first call was taken at 4:15 p.m. and the second at 4:30 p.m. These calls were identical and ended with the caller laughing and hanging up. The third and final call came at 5 p.m. and the caller said, quote, "I'm the East Side Rapist and I have my next victim already stalked and you guys can't catch me," end quote.
Then on the 2nd of December 1977, a call was made to the Sacramento Sheriff's Department from a man claiming to be the East Area Rapist. The caller said, "You're never going to catch me, you dumb fuckers. East Area Rapist, I'm going to fuck again tonight, be careful." Now, before saying East Area Rapist, he had apparently said something else, but it could not be made out what it was. Mm-hmm. The next victim was attacked that night.
Right, so he was true to his word.
Yeah.
Now, on or around December 9th, 1977, a previous victim of DeAngelo received a phone call, which she said was from her attacker. She recognised his voice. During this call, he said, quote, "Merry Christmas, it's me again."
That's disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Don't be giving me your Christmas wishes. I don't want your Christmas wishes.
Yeah. Like, why? Like, that's pure taunting.
Yeah, like, he really lived and breathed for taunting his victims. Like, he wasn't satisfied with just traumatising them.
No, he had to follow up.
Exactly.
So the Sheriff's Department received a phone call again on the 10th of December at 9:50 p.m. The caller said, "I am going to hit tonight, what avenue?" A second call came in at 9:52 p.m, again saying the same thing, "I am going to hit tonight, what avenue?"
Why is he giving warnings, like?
Yeah.
I suppose because he thinks he can't be caught.
But then again, like, an avenue is... There's probably a decent amount of houses, like, he could still possibly get away with how he's been so far. Well, possibly he did.
Yeah, he did.
I don't know, did he end up attacking in that area? I didn't see that name mentioned anywhere else.
So, on January 2nd, 1978, the first known rape victim received a phone call. It was a wrong number call asking for someone named Ray, saying, "Is Ray there?"
I heard the audio of that.
Yes. So this call was recorded and it is believed the same person called again later that evening. This call was also recorded and we are going to play... We're going to play a little snippet. That's why I sent it to you.
Well, you didn't say that when you sent it to me. So I didn't download it. You asked me, did I want to listen to it?
No, I asked you, did you want it for the podcast?
No, you literally word for word.
Right,
it's on text message.
Sorry, hold on. Let me...
We'll add phone calls to the end.
Yeah, so the caller said, "Gonna kill you, gonna kill you, gonna kill you.
Oh,
Bitch,
I actually didn't listen to that myself
bitch,
yet, that one.
Bitch, fucking whore. That's literally it. Gonna kill you, gonna kill you, gonna kill you. Bitch, 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 fucking whore. And before that, there was just some creepy, heavy breathing. It made me uncomfy. The victim,
maybe I won't. You look it up if you want to.
It was creepy, honestly.
I'll put a link in our resources folder thingy.
Yes,
with a note, actually, because at least that way, if you don't want to hear it, you don't have to.
Because I even found it a little bit ugh. So the victim identified the voice as belonging to her attacker.
Yeah, recognised it.
You would recognise it.
Yeah, that's something you'd never forget.
No.
On the 6th of January 1978, a call was received at Contact Counselling Service. The male caller asked, "Can you help me?" After being asked what was wrong, the caller said, "I have a problem, I need help because I don't want to do this anymore." When asked what he didn't want to do anymore, the caller said that he was the East Side Rapist. After a brief conversation, the man eventually angrily said, "I believe you are tracing this call," and hung up.
Believe you're tracing this call.
I
don't know why that reminded me of this, but have you ever heard the recordings of the weepy voiced killer?
No, I don't even like the name. Not that I like the name of any serial killer, because they're a killer, but...
He'd ring from a payphone. I've heard some of them, like, they're stuck with me. And he'd be, like, on the phone, like, "I just killed again. Like, you guys need to stop me." Like, sounding like he was crying and things. It's creepy as fuck. So, in 1982, while one of the previous victims was working at a Denny's restaurant, she received a phone call at work. During the call, the rapist threatened to rape her again.
What the fuck?
And it's believed that DeAngelo had gone to the restaurant at some point and had recognised her as one of his past victims.
Hence knowing where to ring.
Yeah. And then in 1991, another previous victim received a minute-long phone call from her attacker. I don't know what was said, but she said that you could hear a woman and children in the background, and this led to the belief that the killer, the rapist, the burglar had a family.
Okay. On the 6th of April 2001, a previous victim of the East Area Rapist received a phone call from a man who whispered, "Remember when we played?"
Oh.
The victim positively identified the voice as being that of the East Area Rapist. The phone call was made only 2 days after the breaking news that the East Area Rapist crimes had been tied by DNA to the murders in Southern California. So, like, the person that received this call, the previous victim, was probably aware that this was also who would be known as the Golden State Killer at this point, because it was 2 days after that news broke. So like, that makes it extra terrifying. Then
remember when we? Oh no!
Yeah, that's disgusting.
No, there was no. You were no more playing.
In the spring of 2004, Michelle Cruz, the sister of murder victim Janelle Cruz, received a series of hang-up phone calls. At this time, the brother of murder victim Keith Harrington was pushing to get Proposition 69 wrapped up. Bruce's main goal was to use the law of the land to force the California prison system to do a massive DNA sweep to find his brother's killer. Proposition 69 was successful, but unfortunately the Golden State Killer was not found. Michelle Cruz took part in a press conference around this time and afterward received 5 or 6 hang-up calls a day for around 2 weeks or so. When Michelle would answer these calls, the caller would not speak, but he would not hang up either.
He would just be silent.
Yeah,
on the other
it is not known whether this was DeAngelo or not, but the style of his hang-up phone calls and the fact he made calls like this wasn't widely known at the time, so it's very possible that it was him calling.
Yeah. So kind of getting onto the investigation now. According to people who worked on the cases, poor communication between agencies, investigative tunnel vision and antiquated technology meant that the original Night Stalker, the Visalia Ransacker, the East Area Rapist and the Golden State Killer weren't linked for years. For example, the link between the original Night Stalker, I don't know why I put him in as OGS, the original Night Stalker and the East Area Rapist wasn't established until 2001. And it was established due to persistence from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, who wanted to link the Galetta cases as well, which was mostly due to similarities in the MO. DNA evidence from the East Area Rapist cases was tested against DNA from the Smith, Harrington, Withen and Cruz murders and was found to be a match. And then 10 years later, in 2011, DNA evidence showed a match to the Domingo Sanchez murders as well. Investigators were running out of ideas on how to track down the killer. He had never left fingerprints behind, and his DNA wasn't a match to anyone in any police database. In early 2018, the case was reopened, with a $50,000 reward offered for any information leading to an arrest, but nothing came up. Paul Holes, a retired police officer and cold case detective, decided he was going to try something relatively new, a genealogy site.
Okay.
So he took a sample from the scene of the 1980 double murder in Ventura County and ran it through GED Match. Now, GED Match is a public genetic database where you can upload your DNA. And he got something.
Bing bang.
Bing bang bong. So the killer's great-great-grandparents popped up.
That's
Yeah.
going back.
Great-grandparents. So then, over the next 4 months, investigators painstakingly created a family tree, which led them to 72-year-old Joseph James DeAngelo.
Boom.
Boom.
Son of
You're
a
caught.
bitch.
You're caught. So police
Or
sneakily...
according to the genealogy, son of a 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 bitch.
I like that one. So police sneakily collected DeAngelo's DNA from the door handle of his car and later from a used tissue found in his curbside bin. Both were matched to samples from the Golden State Killer crime scene. Like, full matches.
Yeah.
There was no doubt.
It was 100% like.
The arrest was widely celebrated and inspired many police departments to use genealogy databases to attempt to solve crimes. But it did also raise questions about privacy and genetic data. So Malia Fullerton, an ethicist with the University of Washington, said to the New York Times, quote, "This is really tough. He was a horrible man and it is good that he was identified, but do the ends justify the means?"
Yes.
Now, in terms of GED Match, I have put my DNA up on that before.
And I plan to.
And it does say to you, now I don't know if this is just a new thing that's been brought in since this.
Maybe it's a GDPR thing.
But you do have to go through a lot of red tape. Like, you have to accept a lot of terms and conditions, and they do state very clearly that police will have access to your DNA if it pops up that they've put someone's DNA into the system and you're related to them. So they are very forthcoming in that way. Now, there was a woman, Michelle McNamara, who was a stay-at-home mother by day, but by night she would conduct intense research into unsolved murders.
What was her name?
Michelle McNamara. I'm pretty sure she was one of the sources for something that I used or something that one of us used. Or
No, it just sounds familiar. I think she passed away, I think.
She did. She was listed. Do you know what it was?
She was an avid,
She was listed as a resource on the Wikipedia when I was checking for the layout for the headings and things.
Yeah.
So
I'd say that's how I saw it too.
Yeah, so she would conduct intense research into unsolved murders and she would share her findings to thousands of her followers on her blog. In 2016, she was working on a book about her mission to identify the Golden State Killer when sadly she suddenly passed away in her sleep. Michelle left behind 3,500 files related to the case and 37 boxes of case files that she had gathered from an Orange County prosecutor and numerous other sources. In the epilogue of her book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which was published after her death, she addresses the killer directly as she imagines the day police finally catch him, ringing his doorbell and arresting him, saying, quote, "Open the door, show us your face, walk into the light." I just had to include her because that was, like, for someone who wasn't... The work she put in as a stay-at-home mother with a husband and children and a family and other things to be doing with her life. She wasn't a police officer, she wasn't a detective, she wasn't with the FBI. She was just a standard human being who was interested in this and put in countless hours of work. Like, I couldn't not mention her because she just seems like
she didn't put in 110%, she put in like 1,010%.
Yes.
So then we've kind of got like other suspected murders. So after the arrest of Joseph James DeAngelo, it was also suspected he had committed the 1974 Visalia rape and murder of Jennifer Armour, Armour, one or the other. I would
just say Armour.
Yeah.
But yeah, Armour sounds fancy.
It does sound fancy, yeah. The 1975 Exeter rape and murder of Donna Jo Richmond and a 1978 murder of a woman and her son in Simi Valley. But he was cleared as a suspect in all three of those instances by DNA testing. American law enforcement had also reportedly reached out to the police in Australia to determine if the Golden State Killer could have moved there and become Mr. Cruel.
Oh yes, I've heard about I've not heard much about Mr. Cruel, but the name rings a bell.
Mr. Cruel attacked 4 girls under 14 years old in Melbourne from 1987 to 1991. 3 of the girls were abducted from their homes in front of their families. His face was never seen. Mr. Cruel was never caught. He raped 3 of his victims and the crime stopped after murder of his 4th victim. Bear in mind they're all under 14.
Yeah, like that's a big jump down in age.
Yeah. There were attempts made to link the Golden State Killer and Mr. Cruel as they shared similarities such as wearing a mask and claiming they were there to rob the victims, had long hair, and they would sometimes pause during attacks to eat food from their victims' kitchens. Australian law enforcement was not convinced the Californian killer was Mr. Cruel. In a statement to The Australian, an Australian newspaper, the police wrote, "Victoria Police is aware of the matter regarding the Golden State Killer in the US," and they said, This was reviewed in relation to the outstanding Mr. Cruel investigation in Victoria, and any connection has been ruled out."
I wouldn't have even attempted to connect them, to be honest, but I suppose the police were desperate to make some sort of a connection at the time. So on April 24th, 2018, after around 42 years since the first crime, the first burglary we'll say, Joseph James DeAngelo was finally arrested for his horrific crimes. Police arrested him at his home in Citrus Heights, Sacramento County. He was home alone at the time of his arrest, and reports state that he seemed surprised to have been caught. But I suppose
after that amount of time, you wouldn't really expect a knock on the door to be the police for your arrest.
He told police he had a roast in the oven.
Oh yeah, we'll wait.
The officers told him, "We'll take care of it."
Yeah.
And he was arrested.
Could you imagine? After all those crimes, police show up at your door and you're just like, "I have a roast in the oven."
You're under arrest for burglary, rape and murder. Well, I've got a roast in the oven, lads. That's grand, we'll take care of it. Like,
that honestly sounds like an Irish thing to happen, if anything.
I've the stew on.
Do you know what I mean?
Stew. But he was arrested.
Can I get you an Irish coffee while you wait?
Would you like a hot whiskey?
Okay.
So he was arrested without incident, and once in police custody, DeAngelo gave a cryptic confession of sorts where he stated an internal force or secondary personality named Jerry drove him to commit his crimes. And then apparently once left alone in the interrogation room, DeAngelo said the following to himself: "I didn't have the strength to push him out. He made me. He went with me. It was like in my head. I mean, he's a part of me. I didn't want to do those things. I pushed Jerry out and had a happy life. I did all those things. I destroyed all their lives. So now I've got to pay the price." At trial, DeAngelo was charged with...
now I've got to pay the price. Because I got caught, not because I felt bad and handed myself in or anything like that. Just because I got caught.
Sure, I pushed Jerry out and I lived a happy life. So, at trial, DeAngelo was charged with 13 counts of murder and 13 counts of kidnapping. He couldn't be charged for the rapes or burglaries as the statute of limitations had run out.
Pisses me off so much.
It needs to go. Like, okay, with burglary, fair enough. Like, maybe someone's going through addiction or something, they break into your
with
house
certain
and
burglaries and certain petty crimes,
with rape,
that makes sense.
There
but things
is
like rape,
absolutely no fucking reason on this planet that rape should have a statute of limitations. I don't care if someone got raped in 1930 and the killer was caught when he was 90.
Then
he still deserves to go to jail. Yeah. That victim still deserves justice.
If it's, let's say, 30 years later and unfortunately the evidence is dematerialised or, not able to be used anymore, then unfortunately there's nothing you can do because there's no evidence.
But
statute of limitation, there can be so much evidence, but it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Like, there is physical evidence linking him to these rapes. Yeah. But these women didn't get the justice that they deserve. Like,
he's probably still going to be in prison till he dies. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't charged for what he did to them.
Exactly.
It's disgusting.
It's disgraceful. Honest to God, like, it's fucking ridiculous. It boils my piss. It does. It boils my blood. It boils my piss. It boils me. It boils me. He was arraigned on August 23rd, 2018 in Sacramento, or Scaramento as I wrote it. At a hearing on April 10th, 2019, prosecutors announced that they would be seeking the death penalty. And on June 29th, 2020, DeAngelo pled guilty in exchange for a life sentence as part of a plea bargain, taking the death penalty off the table. On August 21st, 2020, he received multiple life sentences to be served consecutively without the possibility of parole. He offered a brief apology after hearing victim impact statements, saying, quote, "I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt." That's great. That fixes everything.
Yeah.
Fixes everything.
You're going to heaven now, son.
Jennifer Carroll, whose father and stepmother were killed in 1980, said she was disturbed the first time she saw DeAngelo in court, describing him as, quote, "an average old man, shoulders sagging and whiskers on his face," but said, quote, "yet we know on the inside there's a monster there."
It's awful. Then going on to the kind of, I suppose, the reaction of Joseph's own family, DeAngelo's own family. Joseph DeAngelo's daughter, in a letter filed to the court, described her father as very loving and very loyal. She said, "I could never tell you all the things my father did for me because he always put me and my daughter first all of our lives, so there is far too many." She also said, "Anything my daughter or I ever needed, he provided. He was consistently selfless about caring for and providing for his family. As evidence of his selfless care for his family, my father worked 7 years beyond his 65 years age of retirement. He did not retire until 72, just weeks before his arrest. This was to enable all his children to have college graduate degrees, to make sure me and my daughter never went without anything, and to give us the best quality of life." Now, the full letter is over 4 pages long. I didn't read it all, not going to lie, but I did choose those few parts to mention briefly. Then moving on, his now ex-wife, Sharon Marie Huddle, who DeAngelo married in 1973, said in a statement to the court that his actions have had a devastating and pervasive effect on her life. Sharon also said in the statement, "I will never be the same person. I now live every day with the knowledge of how he attacked and severely damaged hundreds of innocent people's lives and murdered 13 innocent people who were loved and have now been missed for 40 years or more." Sharon never refers to him by name and calls him the defendant the whole way through her statement. Sharon said, "I have lost the ability to trust people. I trusted the defendant when he told me he had to work or was going pheasant hunting or going to visit his parents of miles away. When I was not around, I trusted he was doing what he told me he was doing." Now, I've decided not to go any further regarding the family because I only wanted to mention what really kind of pertained to the case and what they said in their statements. What kind of pertained
to him.
Yeah, and as I can imagine, it was a very hard revelation for them to come to terms with. Because, like, as you can tell by the daughter's statement, he was, as far as she knew,
he had two sides.
As far as she knew, he was this loving, kind father figure who would do anything for her and his granddaughter, and went out of his way, didn't retire when he could have retired, so that he could get all his children through school. So to them, he was in essence the perfect family man, at least to the daughter anyway.
They must have been so fucking blindsided.
And then, people don't like, when you find out there's like lies and stuff in your marriage, that's one thing. But when those lies are like, finding out you're a murderer, they're a murderer, a rapist, a burglar, a kidnapper, all these things. Like,
and it's the fact he wasn't just one thing. Like, he started off with burglary and then moved on to rape and then moved on to murder, like, over the span
and then
of
decided
years.
to do it all at once.
And it's the fact of finding out that he was lying to his family for years. Like, it must have been so...
Because he was lying to them while he was doing it. He was lying to them when he stopped,
Yeah, like, it must have been so difficult for them as a family to learn that and to go through that process of the court.
It's
earth-shattering. It was so public as well because he was arrested only a couple of years ago. So it was... And I remember following when he got arrested and following when he got sentenced and all of that, like, because it was so recent.
Yeah, even though all the murders may not have been and everything, but the actual break in the case was very, very new.
So just to finish off, I have literally 3 lines on his incarceration.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet, like I was going to say like myself, but I'm tall. In November of 2020, so literally 2 years ago, DeAngelo was transferred to North Kern State Prison. And as of February 2021, he is being held in protective custody at California State Prison in Corcoran.
And that is the story of the Golden State Killer, a.k.a.
a sick individual.
A.k.a. Joseph James DeAngelo. Well, you're not wrong.
A.k.a.
Sick isn't even the word.
No, like, he's depraved. Depraved is the word I would use.
There's just too many words to use.
There's so many. Disgusting. Depraved.
Vile.
Evil, horrid, horrific, horrendous. malignant, horrible, ugly.
That's also very true.
Inside and out.
Well.
Evil.
Knievel. Anywho.
So there we go, an hour and a half, not too bad.
That wasn't too bad for how bulky I thought that was going to be, because there was a lot in that.
And I'm not going to sing you the Irish national anthem this time.
So, with that, we bid you adieu. I don't know what week this is going up. This is next week, I think.
Yeah.
The 19th. So, actually, the next episode we will be recording will be our Christmassy special. And by Christmassy special, probably people who were murdered on Christmas. There is nothing special about it in that sense.
I had not picked my case yet, and I would not have picked a Christmas case if you didn't say it.
Oh, we're going to have to...
Oh, we'll suss that out later. We'll suss out the recording
we're
schedule.
gonna
suss it out before I go home, like.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, thanks for listening to our little babble at the end there. Behind the scenes.
There you go. A little insight into the planning.
So, yes, we hope you found the case, I guess, I don't know. I don't want to say enjoyed the case because
it's not enjoyable.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, give us a 5-star review for the crack. And also I posted it on the Instagram, but because it was from like a month ago, but I hadn't seen it. But yeah, the review that was
so
put on the
sweet.
iTunes. Thank you for that.
The name? I know you.
I'm getting it up because gotta give them a shout out.
Yes, of course.
Let's see. Hang on. Review. Let's have an old look. If my reception would let it load. Anna's Bananas 76. Thank you very much for your lovely review.
You're so sweet.
We love it. We appreciate you. And we appreciate, obviously, all of you that listen.
Yes, of course.
And
we appreciate you more if you give us
a 5-star review. Nothing below 5. Thank you very much.
Because she gave us 5 stars, so she set the bar now for the rest of the
bar is high.
The bar is high.
But and make sure you follow our Instagram at Twisted Talks Pod. We're on Facebook, Twisted Talks Pod as well, I think. But if you just type in Twisted Talks, you should find us. And on YouTube as well, actually, just for people who don't really use podcasting platforms. So Twisted Talks as well. No, they're not videos.
They're not allowed to see us.
Yeah, we haven't reached that stage yet.
Don't you dare perceive us.
So yeah.
So thank you for listening.
And auf Wiedersehen.
Why can't I think of anything? Goodbye.